Traders, welcome to today's market recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day recap for Wednesday, the 8th. Well, another interesting day. We will get to that. I will get to some of the themes, and I will get to, definitely where we're seeing some relative strength. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer right there. So yes, I have theme of the day is poor market breadth. And I think when you look at what the small caps did today, down another 1% for the day. We can look at those first, even though that's not what is really that exciting about the market. But still, I think it's kind of interesting that this did fill this gap. Maybe it holds in here, right? For a trade. But overall, this is what we call relative weakness, right? Let me talk about a couple of the more interesting stories. Huge move in TLT. I talked about kind of coming into this week that we really didn't have many events. All of the big economic events were last week, right? We had all those ISM numbers. We had the jobs report. We had we also had the Fed meeting last week, and this week there's really not too many economics on the radar, but there were some bond auctions, and what the demand, what we were going to see for these bond auctions, I thought was going to be kind of a tell for the week. And yesterday we had the 3-year bond auction, and today we had the 10-year bond auction. Normally I don't talk about bond auctions, but as much as equities have been moving on what bonds have been doing, it's important. And the more that this TLT kind of moves up and manages to kind of make a move above the value area for the month of November, it just takes the pressure off of equities, and equities are kind of doing their own thing now. There's some momentum in names. I think if you look at some of the names that reported after the close today, as well as what we've been seeing over the last week with earnings reports, right? There is definitely more of that, stock selection, going on right now. So interesting. This is the first time TLT has gotten over its 50-day moving average since all the way back in July, and then it was just there for a day. So bottom line is, as I said in the beginning of the week, I wanted to see TLT stay above 86. It is doing that, and we're finding a lot of trading opportunities in single stocks. So let's get to a couple of those themes as we get bonds out of the way. But what's interesting is, so another thing that I'd like to talk about some of the things that I observed during the day. One of which is last week we saw just about everything go up. There's a lot of sectors and areas of the market that were up over, into the double digits for the week. But we knew that wasn't going to last, right? Not everything is going to continue to go up that way. And notice like what areas are kind of coming back down. And even though it's not interest rate causing this move, there just doesn't seem to be the appetite right now in biotech, right? And of course solar, which had a bounce, but anything could bounce in a downtrend, which is what we talked about. Look at how solar got rejected here, right, into the bottom of value. XBI, which I would love to see biotechs kind of get going a little bit more, but here was this big move off the lows, just like many other stocks, and it's just having trouble in here. It hasn't lost the 20-day moving average, but it's still, it has, I wouldn't call it a turnaround story until it could at least get above, 72, 89, 73. Again, something to watch. And, that's part of our job as traders and investors, is to basically monitor, look for things, for subtle changes in the market, and understand when things may just be a bounce and a downtrend for the time being. All right. So what's been, going crazy? Well, before I get to that, let's talk about the indices just for a second. Today was not a big day for the indices, and I know that there's this streak that's been going on for the Qs. It's something like 8 in a row. It doesn't really matter to me, so I don't count days. I don't care how many the last time that the Qs were up this many days in a row. I'm just looking for trading opportunities. Right now, the S&P is still kind of having a little bit of difficulty with that top of value. That's 4401.25. This is S&P futures, right? So that's where this lives. If you like to look at SPY's actually made, so you got one that's made it above the value area. Futures, S&P futures have not. The Qs, excuse me, the Qs are managing to kind of stay in here. This was a nice back test, right? We were talking about, and I think a lot of people share this view, that people want to see, oh, it'd be great if some, if the market kind of rests a little bit. But the problem is, as I talked a little bit about in yesterday's video, that there's a lot of investors that have been trapped out of the move. So anytime the market will go down a little bit, they're there buying. And I think that's what we saw basically in the Qs, right? It doesn't look like there's that appetite for small caps, but you could see from the lows today, and we had a noticeable tick lower. One of the things that I look at is ticks for extremes, right? And that was right around 12 o'clock. We had about a negative 1,000 print that was right in here, and buyers kind of stepped in from there. So again, sometimes you see shakeouts like we saw 2 weeks ago, right? In the overall indices, today felt like a little bit of a shakeout. Right. And again, having some patience here and having a trading plan going into today is important, because I didn't think that we were going to go off to the races today. I thought we might grind or do something like that, but it's nice to have these little, pushbacks like this. And of course, there's buyers that are coming in. I think the MOC for today, which kind of gave us this last move up, was about $1.8 billion. So, Qs remain very strong. We're sitting here above value, where S&P is fighting with that top of value a little bit, right? And then, of course, what's been going on in tech has just been pretty amazing. My concern, about a week ago was, well, my concern, I guess, over the last couple of weeks, that we've been making lower highs. Notice what XOK has done, right? It's taken out that previous high, right? And now the trend has changed, right? This is getting overbought. It's over its 5-day moving average. I mentioned in one of these videos this week, I think I did it on Monday, where I substitute out of Microsoft was a name that I wanted to get involved in. Microsoft is still going up, up another 0.75% today. But I did make the switch out of Microsoft and into tech, which again, there's still over 20% of this XLK ETF is Microsoft, but you've got other things in there like Apple and NVDA and so forth. But yeah, I mean, this is really nice. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about virgin point of controls, as I always do in these videos, because that's where overhead supply is, right? And I'm always a little bit of a seller into in my swing trading. Long-term trading, no, not so much, but for swing trading or shorter term trading, I'm always taking profit targets where I see some overhead supply, because sometimes it becomes a battle of buyers and sellers, right? Where there's been high volume previously. So I'm always taking a target there. So that's what I did today. NVIDIA, also speaking of a 1-hour virgin point of control, right? So this is nice, because if you're not in NVIDIA, right, what I would say is watch to see if it could stay above 466, and you could use this as a stop, right? Because NVIDIA is just starting to challenge this previous high, right? And I like this pattern, right? I like the fact that we've been price action has been, NVIDIA has been a huge performer this year, but the last few months it's been going sideways, right? So now the question is, will it break, right? And a lot of people use or talk about the Darvis theory, right, of watching for names to go from one level to the next level, right? That's what our market values area, sorry, I can't speak today. Our value area study does, the MarketWebs, is basically looks for that, right? We look for a name to get out of its range and then to start building into the next. So very similar to how Darvis, in that book, I think it's called How I Made $2 million in the Stock Market or something to that effect. Yeah, so this level right here, short-term level, this 466, and if you can manage to get above there, then I think your next area is an extension away from this week's value area, which is 478 and then 493. Sticking with the semis, right? And we'll talk about some single stocks here, but Broadcom, and I bought some Broadcom today. This was one of our watch list names, right? Going into, I think it should be, yeah, here it is, right? And you can see this is up 2.9% from its trigger. And you've got more names going into the dark green here from our weekend watch list. Notice I add names as the week progresses, right? So as we get started and as I see opportunities, like I added Palantir on here. Why did I do that? Because Palantir has pulled back a little bit from its earnings. So that's a name that I want to keep an eye on. Same thing, I know this is a very popular name on Twitter, this VRT. It's worth watching, right? So that's why I added some of these names on here. But, we'll talk about some of the outperformers. DraftKings, I got out of my trade yesterday. Speaking of Virgin point of control, I would like to see this digest, maybe come back into the 5-period moving average. Then I might get back involved in it. But as of now, no position. Another name on our watch list, I actually put on a trade today. Right. So again, I'm doing that substituting out of names and getting into some names. But I really like this this little doji type candle, right, from yesterday and holding the 5-period moving average. Right. And let's see, right. This is now just started to take out the highs back from September. So I'm long this name looking for new highs in this. All right. So again, I try to follow some of these names as much as possible. ZS, I did not get in. That name has been running quite nicely. Right. It did hit some resistance there at 175.38. Another name that I had mentioned that was on my radar for this week for earnings is this AXON, which has basically spent a lot of months. This is going back to, we now broke out to, made a new 52-week high. I believe that's a new all-time high, but it's taken out those highs all the way back from March and April, right? Spent some time, had a bad earnings reaction, had a better earnings reaction, but really didn't do too much, kind of went sideways for about a quarter. And now let's see if it's ready to kind of break out to new highs. I like this company. So, and I think it's, there's a theme that's going on with this one. Speaking of themes, the education names have been absolutely on fire. Duolingo is very close to breaking out to new highs, right? This was a name that we played in earnings today. It hit 185. It's up to about 178. So very strong. And again, continuing with its trend, and what we're seeing as well with just in this little subgroup of education names. Another name that does not look bad, by the way. Now, again, this is China. And adds another layer of risk. But this is a name that we talked about in the trading room yesterday. Right, really nice trend here. It's been consolidating here. It had earnings, did this gap up and kind of a little bit of a fade. But again, this sector is hot right now. Sticking with China names just for a second, I would keep an eye on this PDD. Right, if China is going to get going a little bit, this has been one of the better performers in China equities. This name, if it breaks one, so again, you don't have to rush into this name right now. Same thing with like the Darvis principle. Wait until it kind of gets out of this range, right, out of the value area for the month, 110.55, and maybe you can aim for 119, and then 120, 125.78. A couple other names too I wanted to mention, because again, there's just a lot of positive things going on, right? Besides, I know like the media likes to talk about the Magnificent Seven names and thinking that those are the only names going up. But look at Motorola Solutions too, another name, right? Consolidation, and breaking out. First, we're seeing this in a lot of names right now. Gap up and continuation. Right. So we talked about how that we wanted to see this earnings season have good earnings and then follow through like this. It's always what I kind of talk about going into earnings season, is that you're going to find a lot of trading setups for the next quarter based on how well names that are doing that are executing on earnings. And I have something like 65 names right now that are in my earnings watch list for that have had strong moves and strong earnings. Just a couple other names, so speaking of, there's another one too, right? ServiceNow, is this one of the Magnificent 7 or 8, whatever they're calling it? I don't know, but this is another name that's breaking out, right? And very, very, very impressive. And then the last name I wanted to talk about, which is not I'm not going in any particular order here, but I like this American Eagle too, which has been consolidating. Now this name's going to report later in the month, but nice little accumulation, a little bit of a slower mover, but nice move here. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. Again, I'm very pleased to see DUOL up after hours because we played this one in earnings. And then the other one too that we played in earnings, which is HubSpot. Right, this one's also off to the races too. This is a name that really hasn't done much. You look at this chart and it went down the last time on earnings, which is in here. So it's kind of becomes dead money when a name with high valuation, high growth, when it does not have a good quarter, you could see what happens. So it needs basically a positive earnings report to straighten itself out. And Hubs has gone up, I think, like 7 out of the last 10 earnings quarters, maybe even better than that. Looks like it's about 8 out of the last 10. So this is the column that I generally look at. So yeah, nice execution and nice to see it follow through. Guys, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.